We're almost at Christmas, folks, and it's great to, as we sit and get ready for the postseason, it's great to actually sit back and chat about the ball to different people. We're delighted to welcome on Paudie Clifford, Kerry, obviously Kerry GAA footballer. Paudie, speaking to you a few months ago, you've had one hell of a year, mate. Obviously, congratulations, and it's just been that year's flown in, but definitely a year for you, for just for you to remember, but a year that you'll definitely look back on with fond memories, mate.
Yeah, 100%. Everything kind of went well, and everything we kind of put our mind to, we managed to go over the line. I'd say it'd be hard to have a year like this again, but I've enjoyed it anyway. I've enjoyed it while it's happened.
I don't want to go too much into the GA or the GAA talk at all, Paudie, but I will ask this. I was sitting in July, August watching it on TV thinking to myself, how does anybody cope with that, not pressure, but I guess the eyes are on you. And we were talking before how when we last spoken, for a lad that's now won the All-Ireland, you look at the next 6 to 8 weeks for players in the NFL and the pressure that they're under. How do you go around, or how do you go about as a player or as an athlete with handling that pressure? And have you any advice that you would give them over the next few months, or were you very much like just take it one game at a time, or what was your sort of focus?
You're taking it literally one training session at a time, one practice at a time for them, and just every training trying to do the basics right. You're not thinking ahead. You're not even thinking about the next session, and getting all the basics right, and then when you know you're fully prepared, I suppose it's a small bit easier. Than at least you know in your head that you're fully prepared. There's nothing else you could have done to prepare yourself. So just to take it every session at a time and tick all the boxes. That's probably the only bit of advice.
I suppose it's funny where when we're looking ahead to the playoffs, I guess a buzzword at the moment is definitely home field advantage. Playing in front of those fans, I mean, look, I was lucky to be at the All-Ireland this year, and you saw the scramble for tickets. I know, like, you're kind of removed from that and you're not paying attention to it at the time, but that home field advantage is massive. Like, if the playoffs do go through Philadelphia at the moment, if they were going to go through Buffalo, like, we know that place to be a fortress, and it kind of completely changes the game. Kind of, what is that literally like? Because we saw, say, at the end of the All-Ireland, how the fans were able to come in for it for Kerry. I know it's kind of a simple question, but, like, it does play a part, right?
Yeah, I think the crowd just gives you that extra lift, and it's obviously massive. It's when it probably it brings you on another few percent when you can hear that roar of the crowd, and the Kerry crowd are great. But I suppose it's probably more important again in the playoffs, as when one team's trying to call plays, when the opposing team is trying to call plays, and the stadium is so loud, especially in Buffalo and Philly. They're great fans. I'd say if they can both be number one seeds, it's going to be hard to beat them in their home stadiums.
Paudie, when you look at the game in Ireland, it's really grown to new levels. The Kerry lads were at the college game in the Aviva in August, which was a huge success. Do you think the growth is something that you've noticed in the last calendar year?
Yeah, I have. I suppose when I started watching first myself, there wasn't that many people interested. But I think with social media and the amount of coverage that the game is getting now, obviously it was always getting a lot of coverage, but yeah, I've seen a massive increase. I think every year, and I'd say it'll increase because it is a great game, and it can be enjoyed by everyone.
Yeah, do you know what? And it's grown like crazy in Ireland. Look, we talked a few weeks about maybe 10 years ago when I started following the NFL. I don't know about yourself, how long you've been following, but we'll get into it in a second. But certainly there's a level that it's grown to now that Tig Leader, a former Connacht player, has set up the Leader Kicking to get more Irish sports people involved in playing American football. And there's a particular focus on kicking skills, because Ireland, we know with our rugby players, certainly with our GAA players and even our soccer players, that they're well able to kick a ball. Look, this isn't to get lads into the NFL, but we know that the Australians are definitely doing it. Michael Dixon from Australia was a pro baller last year. The transferable skills are there for the Australian football that GAA lads are going over. coming from Kerry, there's such an emphasis on football. Do you think that American football can break into that, or is another code that like lads don't really want to touch? Or do you think lads might be interested? I mean, from your part of the world, we already have a lad kicking in America for Georgia. Do you think it'd be too difficult to get into Kerry and beyond?
I suppose you'd have to see a pathway that you can succeed. I suppose your man from the guy from Castle Island, he's with Georgia Tech. Obviously, they were a powerhouse one time, but still a very prestigious college, obviously. So there's a pathway for him. He'll get his degree, and the Steelers kicker actually, he won the Punter of the Year award. He actually went to Georgia Tech before this the guy from Castle Island took over from then. So it's interesting. There's a pathway there that he can get into the NFL. But yeah, I suppose people are going to need to see that it's possible, and maybe one or two getting in will be the reason that people, if one or two maybe can get into the NFL and get starting positions, that could be the door opened. I think that we Irish people, we have the technique, we have the kicking technique definitely. So just if there was a pathway, maybe it might happen. Hopefully, it'd be great to see.
Paudie, I kind of have a fun question for you here. If you played in the NFL, what position do you think you'd be strongest at, other than probably a kicker?
Defensive, I'd be a safety. I'd be a QB as well. QB offensively.
Interesting. So just about the Steelers now, you're obviously a big Steelers fan. I'd love to know how you kind of got into the NFL and what made you specifically pick the Steelers.
I can't even remember how I got into the NFL. I just know that I used to I watch every sport, and I just remember when I was young, I must have just been flicking through all the channels and said, I'll watch this, and I watched it and enjoyed it. And the Steelers then, I'm not 100% sure. I remember the terrible towels, and it was at a time where the Steelers were they won 2 Super Bowls in a few years. Had players like, I loved Palomalu. I remember his hair, but he was an unbelievable player. Big Ben, obviously. And I don't know, I kind of grew from there, and I was never going to switch from the Steelers then, especially when we're having success. I suppose the last bit of success we've had is losing the Super Bowl to Green Bay, which was obviously disappointing. We haven't been back since, but maybe soon, maybe in the next 10 years, hopefully.
I've got fond memories, Paudie, of watching that Super Bowl against Green Bay in Belfast many moons ago. And it's funny because around this time last year, it seems obviously you had Big Ben's last game in Pittsburgh in week 17 last year. It seems like that was 5 minutes ago now. It's really been a 10 to 12 months of real change in Pittsburgh. You've had a busy time yourself. I'm not sure if you've seen too much of Kenny Pickett's. There was talk about his hand size, just ridiculous stuff going on. But now he's in Pittsburgh. He looks to be their man, albeit they had Mr. Trubisky in over the last few weeks. What have you taken so far this season from the Steelers? Do you think Kenny Pickett is a long-term answer, or would you like to see them go out and try and get somebody maybe more established in the league? Or what's your thoughts about it?
So there's a lot there, a lot to answer, I suppose. The Steelers in general are trying to find themselves again, and I think over the last few weeks they kind of have an idea of where they're going to go. They've really concentrated on stopping the run, which was obviously a massive problem the last few years. Getting defensively solid again, and then establishing the run ourselves, which we are a bit more, because Warren is a good number 2 running back to Nagy, so that's working very well. Obviously, we've a young offensive line. I presume in the draft we'll be looking for a first-round offensive line player, which would be a massive help. And I think there's a lot of good players, a lot of good pieces, so I'm not giving up hope yet. Obviously, for the next maybe 2 or 3 years, hopefully we might get back to where we were. And, for the quarterback position, I'm not 100% sure either. I've liked a lot of what Pickett does, but he doesn't have. I wouldn't think he has the superstar quality of a Mahomes or Joe Burrow or QBs like that. And then as it should the Steelers go for someone more established, I wouldn't go that way. I don't think there's anyone available. The last one probably would have been Russell Wilson, but obviously we saw how that has worked out. And I don't think there's going to be any quarterbacks where the Steelers are going to be picking, which is probably maybe 9th to 10th. I don't think there's going to be any good quarterbacks left because a lot of teams need them. If ideally, I'd love to have Bryce Young at Pittsburgh if we had tanked, but tanking isn't the Pittsburgh way, and that's fair enough too.
You know, tanking isn't the way that Pittsburgh goes, and as long as you have Mike Tomlin there, it seems that they can never go full rebuild. But say you're able to put on your kind of fan hat for a second, and you're able to make the Steelers in your own mold. They have been so defensive, which is great, and it's been their calling card. But with Kenny Pickett there now, do you kind of look across the fence and see other players, not even so much Mahomes and Burrow because they're more traditional, but you see Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, because the Steelers are so traditional, it seems, would you be envious of those teams that have these like high-powered offenses? I know the Steelers in your time with Antonio Brown and Big Ben did have that big passing game, but as the NFL develops, it seems that the Steelers are one of those teams that are focusing on the run and that. Are you jealous of those fans that get to watch those other kind of offenses?
It is what's held the Steelers back. Too traditional. Kind of afraid to think outside the box, really. So yeah, that is disappointing. I'm not a major fan of the quarterbacks you called out there because they're exciting to watch, but they are very hit and miss. Whereas I think Pickett can become as good as them anyway. At least I've actually he's been decent, to be fair, and I think giving him a decent offensive coordinator, Matt Canada isn't going to be the answer. So if we got a decent offensive coordinator, that gives him freedom, because we saw the freedom when he was at Pitt. He was able to run. He was throwing. He was one of the best quarterbacks in college. So, I think with a good offensive coordinator, hand him the reins and see what he can do. But yeah, I get your point. The Steelers have been too traditional, and it can be frustrating, I suppose, when you look at the other high-powered offenses. Let
me jump back in, lads, for one more, because you're saying it there, they've also been spoiled with fantastic wide receivers for the last few years. And is it equally as frustrating when a Chase Claypool comes along and they're thinking, okay, here's the future, and then they trade him away, but at the same time you have George Pickens, so you can't complain. I suppose you're just not allowed to buy a jersey with someone's name on it, right?
I'll stick to buying TJ Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick jerseys. But I kind of get your point. I suppose we obviously had Antonio Brown. That was out of their control. Moved on to Juju. Juju was a good second receiver, but he didn't have the star quality of Antonio Brown when he was on the number one quarterback and when he was being doubled. So I wasn't disappointed there. Claypool was a good deep threat, but very inconsistent. So I wasn't overly disappointed there to get a second round pick for him. And we've landed on Pickens, and he looks the real deal. And I like Deontay Johnson as well. Very good route runner. Him and Pickens can work well together in a more, as you said, in an offense that where we can kind of throw the shackles off a bit more. I think they'll be good. A good 1-2 punch, and then you've got Furman as well. I like him as well. So no, I'm happy. I'm happy with where we are when it comes to receiver. To be honest, yeah.
We're going to introduce a kind of quick fire NFL GAA crossover now with these questions. So one thing I'd like to know, Paudie, is who that is playing in the league currently would kind of inspire you, or you would look up to as an athlete.
So Justin Jefferson. I just like his movement, everything about him really. Joe Burrow, I like everything about Burrow, really. I like his personality as well, but I think he's top class, considering he was obviously, things that didn't all go so well for him when he transferred from Ohio State, and he was with his first year with LSU. He was average, and turned it all around. But I like that about him. And Minka Fitzpatrick, and he's the man.
I think they're all good, solid choices.
Yeah.
No doubt. If you were doing the draft in the morning, what would be your best combine drill? 40-yard dash, 3-count drill, vertical, broad jump, bench press, the catch and drill. What would be the one that you'd gravitate towards?
Probably broad jump. Maybe.
Oh, nice. If one of these players was playing for or against, maybe for Kerry, who would you not want it to be? Maybe we'll just go for convenience sake. Would you want to play alongside TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Minka Fitzpatrick, or Najee Harris?
I suppose TJ Watt and Hayward are probably a bit big for footballers, but so we'll go with Minka Fitzpatrick. Yeah.
Minka, yeah, no doubt. And if
we'll go for Minka, we'll put him centre back.
If he is serious centre back,
we'll put him at 6. Yeah.
And if Jack O'Connor was an NFL head coach, living or dead, who would he remind you of? I have a list I can suggest you, but maybe you have your own.
Maybe like Pete Carroll. He's a kind of a players manager. Gets on very well with the players, and obviously very tactically very good as well, which Pete Carroll obviously is from his days in USC and with Seattle. So I go Pete Carroll.
You can literally picture Pete Carroll standing the croaker right now. Just that impression. Here, last one to finish off. Probably been very, very generous for your time, mate. We are sitting here in December in the depths of this season. We've only got a few more weeks of the regular season left. Teams are starting to come out of their shells. You're seeing teams starting to make a run. Two sides of this question. Who have you got in the Super Bowl in February? Who's going to win it as of right now? And tell us, and tell people listening as well, Paudie, because I had people come to me in Munich the night before the game talking about Kerry and the NFL and all yous boys. What happens on a Super Bowl Sunday in Kerry? Is it a quiet affair in the house, or is there somewhere to head to watch it? And just for people listening that are down in that direction.
So who do I think will be in the Super Bowl? Obviously, the AFC is going to be very competitive. I think the Bengals, Chiefs, or Bills, but I'll go our division rivals, the Bengals, against the Eagles. Yeah, they look good, and the Bengals would win that matchup if they could get there. I think the winner is going to come from the AFC. The Eagles will get there, but they won't beat the AFC side. And then the Super Bowl, it all depends really who's in it. I suppose we usually just meet up a few friends and watch it, and watch it together at a house or something like that. And there's a few bars that might have late nights and stuff, would have it on as well, things like that. But no, there's a great atmosphere around for it, and everyone really looks forward to it. And hopefully it'll be a great Super Bowl again this year.
Hopefully, sir. Hopefully, I am fortunate enough, and I know hopefully a few others are going to be in Arizona this year. So what I will do is I'll if I get in, I'll wear a Kerry top and take a picture and definitely send it to you lads for the crack on Super Bowl Sunday. Please God. But here, look, you've been not just fantastic and very, very much appreciate your time now, but just the last year as well, Paudie, and we couldn't be more delighted for you and your family and for your county. So thanks a million for your time, man, and enjoy the rest over Christmas. But before you know it, the champ will be back on again, man. Thanks very much.